All right. We can go ahead and continue to check in. We're going to go ahead and get started. There's a couple things that I wanted to show you today. One of them it's about verifying Employment 101, that it's complete. The other is to look at the ISTEP updates and give you kind of a heads up on what to expect with that. And then the last item is to show you that termination report. So Aaron, I believe Aaron Hacker's with us with DHS. So
Good afternoon.
were there any other items that I know Cynthia had a question. I didn't know if there were any other items that you'd wanted to cover today.
I don't have anything in particular today. As far as Cynthia's question goes, and I think we've asked before too about, there are individuals that may struggle to get a passing score on the NOCTI, and the idea is that the NOCTI is for, it's a measure of career readiness. That the reason we care about the credential for the NOCTI is that it's one measure that tells us that somebody's ready for work. It's certainly not the only measure, and there are certainly people who could get gainful employment without necessarily passing the NOCTI. So we do have some variance built into the performance measure where we don't expect 100% of every CYEP participant to pass the NOCTI. We do expect that a handful will pass the NOCTI, and we have to look at that. I'd have to look at that performance measure to know exactly what the percentage was, but I know it was less than 100%, and the idea is, again, that if possible, we want most of the youth working towards work readiness, and the NOCTI being a measure of that. And so we don't necessarily expect absolutely everyone. So it just depends on your individual situation. If you are going to be working with lots and lots of youth who may have difficulty that's going to prevent them from being able to pass the NOCTI, we can talk about that. You may not be able to meet that performance measure, but we can provide an explanation as to why, and then usually we can work around that. All right.
Aaron, this is Cynthia Harris. I'm on the line now, and
Sure.
Our one main concern was with Employment 101. And our youth, we have some that are struggling with Employment 101 because their reading abilities are so low, and they have their IEPs from their school that indicates that they have learning disabilities in that area of reading. So what should we do with those individuals? We've been working with them, but we see that there are those that are really having challenges in that area.
Well, Cynthia, I might ask, what their IEP recommends.
Okay.
And so, for example, if the IEP recommends that maybe on exams they have an exam reader or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could provide the same services that were recommended in the IEP. Maybe it's something that they could work on if you're working with in-school youth. It may be something that you might be able to even get some assistance from your school in pointing out that, hey, the youth are participating in this grant program. The program is working towards helping them get employment. One of the areas that they're struggling with in completing some of these work readiness things is their reading, and maybe the school could provide some assistance as well. So they're certainly not prevented from participating, but obviously if you've got academic struggles, it's going to make it more difficult to participate, especially when it comes to literacy. Literacy, lack of literacy makes everything in the whole world more difficult, whether it's getting a job or getting training for a job. It's going to make it more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's something that we want them to continue to work on. And, where it is possible, we want them to work around that. So, for example, when I say work around it, what I mean is that, I can remember in a school that I worked at when we were giving state standardized tests. We were giving a math test, but the students couldn't do well on the math test because they couldn't read and understand the questions. When we had someone read the questions to them, they could do the math fine. So they had one skill set. that was being measured by the test, but their lack of literacy was making it difficult to get a valid measure of the test. So with the Employment 101 and the measurement of different skills and the activities that they get to participate in through Employment 101, then, if we can still help them to learn the things that they would learn in the Employment 101 curriculum. We would just have to kind of adapt what we're doing through the WorkNet. And Natasha, I don't know if there are any adaptive tools, audio, video recordings, things like that, through the WorkNet to help with that. Are you aware of anything like that?
We used to offer Browse Aloud, but I don't believe we offer that anymore, and that was where you could read it was a reader that would read the site to you.
And we've been working.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to mention, we've been working with them to kind of like take it at a slower pace and bringing some type of tutoring. We do have a GED tutorer available, but we've been working at a slower pace. It's taking a little more time because we understand that they have those disabilities. But again, we're just concerned about they get kind of a little discouraged when they see their score being so low, although we're still working with them.
Yeah. And one of the things, too, with the NOCTI test, I haven't ever tried it, but we do have a text-to-speech option. So you could try that. It's just whenever you go to order your exam, you would just, create whatever passcode you're going to use for the text-to-speech option, and we could try that. Like I said, I've not personally tried it before, so I haven't seen what it looks like. I just know it's an option that we have.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, again, these youth are not, we don't want them to be barred from participating. In fact, CYEP exists to help serve youth who have barriers to employment. And so we want to help any youth that we're going to serve to do better and when I say to do better, to improve their academic skills, but in a way that leads to employment, with employment being the goal. So whatever we identify as a reasonable employment goal for them, we want to help them work towards that. Employment 101 is one thing that we ask of our participants to do because we think it's helpful in working on both those short and long-term employment goals. And it's one of those situations where we may have to get creative with the tools that are available. Like Natasha said, there may be things that we try and we see if they work, and if they don't, well, we don't use those anymore and we look for something different. But it may be that they need some more guidance as they complete the Employment 101, like you mentioned, or maybe taking it at a slower pace. So all those things are options. It just may be that we've got to have some trial and error, and maybe if you've got discussions with any other providers who have had similar experiences, where we learn the best way to help serve those youth. We do want them to get the benefit of the content in the Employment 101 if it's possible for them to get it, and we believe it's possible for most of the participants to get it. It's just adapting it in a way that we can deliver the content in a way that overcomes the barriers that they've got to getting that information. Does that help?
It does, and we're going to continue, as you said, Aaron, looking for other of our partners, and as we're reaching out and connecting with human service agencies to provide additional tutoring for our youth as well, because we want to continue to get them through the program, and they do really great, once we connect them with their worksite opportunities, and they really are embracing what they're learning, so that's great.
And if we need to make more resources available, those are the kinds of things that we can use grant funds to help with. Those are the kinds of things that you might ask for in a budget or in a budget revision, whether it's special tools that you need, or software that you need, or if you need additional staff. Those are the kinds of things that we would try to make available to help those youth get to a point where they could improve their opportunities for going to work. All right?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks. Okay. For those, I know that there are several people that joined us since we've gotten started. We do have the phone lines open. That if you would like to ask questions, you are welcome to do that. I just ask that whenever you're not talking, to go ahead and mute your phone to minimize any background noise. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and I got a couple updates for you. For starters, I want to go ahead, and if you haven't had a chance to check in, I'll make that available to you in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of my people that are in test. And okay, and so I'm going to go to the progress page. So I know that at least one person has contacted me because they've been looking at their periodic performance report, and I really appreciate it because, you know, there's so many different variables to check, and there's a lot to it, and it really helps to be able to look at it with production numbers, and you know where your people should land. So it really does help with identifying any areas that we might need to really tweak to get it working just perfectly. So one of the areas that was mentioned, somebody said, well, I don't understand, you know, my person, they completed all of their Employment 101 activities. What am I doing wrong? I don't understand why it's not showing up. Now, bear with me. This is a test, so I'm just using it as a placeholder to show you where, you know, some of this information would be. So with, you know, the different items that impact your, I'm going to call it your PPR, periodic performance report, would be, you know, whether or not they have their pre-assessment, their career cluster inventory. So, you know, these should say yes, that they have it, and their score, and yes, that they should have it, and their post-assessment, yes, they should have it. And we have the scores, and so the system can calculate and say, yep, we got it, yep, we got it, yep, we got it, yep, we got it. Now, this one, where it says Employment 101 activities, I'm just going to zoom in here because I want to make sure everybody can see this. Employment 101 activities. We have adjusted this, so this would be a check mark that says this person completed, let's pretend that says 8 out of 8 items. Now, this is based on a person going into their plan, and they're checking that they've done all of these pieces and parts, okay? So the person's gone through and they've looked at all their stuff, and this person says, you know, that they completed whatever it is. Now, with this one, let's just pretend it says they completed 8 out of 8 items. So you as a provider, advisor, career navigator, in order to meet that requirement for your periodic performance report, we want you to, look at this and say, yes, they completed 8 out of 8 items. You could go to the Employment 101 guide, look at it to make sure that they really did complete the information. And then all you do is click verified, and this is going to be the key piece of this that's going to show up in your periodic performance report. And if we need to put a note someplace in there to help with everybody knowing that, but this is the key piece to making sure that that shows up in the periodic performance report. So let me go to the reports, the CYEP reporting, and I believe it's on the assessments tab, and the area that I'm specifically referring to is this one, where it says enrolled youth who completed Employment 101 activities. So Cody just pushed that out to test today. So I don't think he's pushed it out to production yet, but we'll take a look at that and make sure that gets out to production. But if you are looking at your reports and you're not seeing anything here, it means that you need to go through, and the idea is that it's completed and provider verified. Okay, so that's one thing. Real quick, let me go over to the worksite placement. Go in here real quickly. And so I'm going to select one of these people here, Natasha here, and just wanted to show you that. Oh, let me go ahead and change this to started. Okay. I must have already changed myself to terminated here. Now click on it. There we go. Okay. Erin had mentioned this, and I just wanted to point it out specifically. I believe Erin mentioned it last week, that if you go to if you're going to mark a person as terminated, click on terminated, and you put the end date, and you put save. It's going to give you this modal window right here that you need to complete the participant employment termination report. And so you can just click on that and open it up. It's going to tell you to open up this document, which is a very simple document if you haven't already seen it. Employee name, worksite, hire, termination, who did the terminating. And so it's just a few questions. And so we ask that you complete that information, and then you can continue. And that you would update the person's, go to the customer list. And so if I was with Natasha, then I could go to their progress page and upload that document into their file. So we have everything on their progress page. Okay. Any questions? Or Erin, is there anything in addition to that?
No, I like that. I think that works well.
Okay. And so then my next item, what happens if the employer is unable to sign off on the form?
I would say that it is possible that the grantee, the provider there, could complete the form for the employer. We did ask, if you noticed, that all of your employer agreements should include a statement about a commitment that they will complete those forms, because the employer is in the best position to know what happened with the youth. Why was the youth, if the youth was fired or if the youth was just up and quit and disappeared, the employer's in the best position to know. I suppose it's possible, an employer could go out of business and you might not be able to contact anybody at the employer, but I think likely the employer, that's part of the whole reason about having these employer agreements, is that the employer partners that we work with, we want to help them by supplying them with quality employees. And if something's going wrong and the youth is regularly not being successful for long-term on the job, we want to work with the employer to figure out what's going on. So I would think a quality employer partner would be interested in helping us to know what happens with our youth participants. So if the employer can't complete the form, I would say that you as the provider could go ahead and complete the form. You may not have all the information. Ideally, you would contact the employer and you would say, hey, I'm just following up on our youth participant, and my understanding is youth no longer works there. You should be doing this follow-up anyway. Whether or not you know if the youth is still working or not, you should be doing the follow-up to find out. But if you find out that the youth is no longer working there, just ask some simple questions about, why, what happened, and document that information. And then the provider could sign the form as, received information from so-and-so at such and such date and time or something like that. You can indicate where you got the information, but then you would want to sign the form as the provider that you documented it on behalf of the employer. Looking at the question here, it says, they may use the work number for employment verification. Can we include that with the document? I'm not sure I understand your question entirely. So, like if they used a specific employment verification number or something like that, that might not have all the information about why the youth left the employment, if that's what you're saying. Ideally, you would contact the youth's supervisor directly or somebody that was familiar with the youth's work, somebody that worked with the youth or was familiar with the reason that the youth left. And if no reason was given, you know, I think we've got that on a form, but or you could just write no reason was given, and that's fine too. But we do need to know whose decision. At some point in time, if the youth's not working there, somebody decided that that employment was going to end, and it's either the employer who fired the youth, or it's the employee who said, I'm quitting, and you know, we just want to know what's happening. Another reason for that form is we've talked about this before, that if employers are giving youth an opportunity for employment for a short time during the subsidized period, and then they're taking advantage of that youth's subsidized labor, but then they're not actually offering continued long-term employment, well, then they're abusing the system, and we don't want that either. So if we find a pattern that our youth employees, everywhere we place them, every time we place them with a particular employer, if we find a pattern that after the employment transitions to unsubsidized employment, that within 3 days of that happening, all of our youth find themselves without a job over and over and over again, we want some sort of justification from the employer. And so that's why we have them fill out that form, is if they're letting them go regularly in fairly short order, we want to be able to see that, and we probably want to stop placing youth there and find a different employment partner.
Alrighty. Okay, so if you have any other questions related to that form, go ahead and type them in. We're just going to go ahead and move on to the ISTEP for time's sake. Okay, so I'm back on test, and I am in, Natasha CYEP, and you'll see there's a tab here for the ISTEP. ISTEP is the Individualized Services Training and Employment Plan. Right now it has 4 different tabs up here. We have an overview, complete assessments, set goals, build a plan, and just know that this is our first new release as far as global only WorkNet goes. If you're part of the EPIC program, you've seen a slightly different version of this. So just expect to have enhancements. More enhancements come through as we move forward. The overview page provides, assessments, desired career path, some summary of some accomplishments. We do have a listing of, you'll see the goals. Something that's different this week than last week is that now when you do the show hide steps, you can see like this one says gain permanent employment with employer in this industry, show steps, and then underneath that line item you'll see that these are the different types of services or steps that have been identified. And so we'll go ahead and you can select these, and it'll take you to the services area where you can update it, and the same thing goes with the goals area. So what we really try to do is, provide you more than one way to get to those tools. So if you're looking at this one, you're like, oh, wait a minute, they already, that says not started, let me fix that. So you just click on it, and you can go to the not started. Come on. I say that, it's making the liar out of me. Well, you'll be able to edit this. My program has been making lots of updates to it, so again, we have to go through and fully test every little feature, but you'll be able to update your items, your goal statements, and so forth. So that's your overview page. We kind of looked at that last time. the assessment piece, again, this hasn't really changed much. You're going to be able to add your assessment summary. You'll be able to see a history of those summaries, who made that summary, and when it was entered into the system. And then you can also view the different results. And one of the things that we did update, I mentioned last time, is that now you'll have the ability to, we didn't have this last time, to update their career choices and that type of thing in this area. So you can update their goals. Okay. The next area that we talked about was, again, like setting the goals and then building the plan. So you can start out with looking at the different types of services that are available, that are recommended, and then once they are added, then you'll see them in your plan services. So one of the differences from last week, or you can expect to see more icons through this area that will provide, just kind of like a visual cue as to the different types of information that's associated with each of these services. And so one of the things I didn't have last time, I'll show you what I did have last time. What I did have last time is something like, exploring jobs, required skills and credentials, and wage information. So that's the service, that's the step or service that the person's going to do. It's associated with gain permanent employment. We have our start date, our end date, weekly hours, the status, the open, closed, or opened or completed. Again, you can identify which barriers it's associated with. If you don't see your barrier listed here, you can do the show more. You can update that service for the customer. You can update service providers, who's providing that service. So if you, the grantee, is providing that service, then you're automatically selected. If it's somebody else, you can just click Other Provider and enter in that information. If there's a dollar value that's associated with that service, maybe you had to, I don't know, do a bus pass, or if you needed to purchase some equipment for this customer, you could add in the dollar value and then the number of times that has occurred for this particular step or service. Okay. Let me just go back. So that's what I showed you last time. One of the things that the programmers have done since then is what we needed to do was be able to take all those worksite placements that you're working on and be able to add those into the ISTEP. And we don't want you to have to flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop back and forth between worksite placement and the ISTEP, and we definitely don't want you to have to do dual entry. That's what we're always trying to avoid. We work towards eliminating dual entry whenever possible. So one of the things that if you're going through this process, and ideally if this would have been available and from the onset, is that you would use Worksite Placement to go through and set up all your employers and all the work sites with all their contacts and all that kind of information. And then you can just kind of like leave it there. And then, because that's part of like your setup process, is getting all your work sites and everything set up ahead of time. And so then as you're working with your customer, you're like, okay, well, part of this is to get permanent employment as part of this program. So that's the service that was added. I'm going to click that it's related to, you're going to identify what goal it goes with. And I'm going to remove this just as an example. Okay, so we have it related to a goal. And then you're going to select an employer. So I'm going to click Add. And it adds it into the fields that are down here. Now, these fields should look very familiar to you, because they are also the fields that are in worksite placement. So we want to change that to whatever the minimum wage is, and we'll say maybe like $4 of it is a subsidized wage. Maybe it's full-time, and it started, maybe the start date was on May 1st. We have, 35 hours a week. In your case, not WIO funded. You can identify if there's any barriers that this addresses, and, my assumption is that it should always, address at least the limited work history or experience, and then click Update Customer Service. And so it has updated the information for this particular service in the customer's ISTEP as well as in Worksite Placement. And let's say, for example, if there's any dollar value that's associated with the service that you needed to have added to this, then you could add it to this step as well. So as far as next steps, again, there's going to be continuing enhancements and finessing, but I'm going to continue doing testing on it, and I would like to have it out on production tomorrow, but I would ask that you not do anything with it yet. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I know there are some areas that need to have some tweaks made to it before I really want anybody just jumping in. But the main thing is that I know that many of you already have your worksite placements in Worksite Placement, and I want my programmers to pull those into the ISTEP so that so you don't have to do it is like the main thing. And so if you could please, even though you might see the ISTEP out there, don't do anything with it yet. Please let me work with the programmers to make sure that all of your worksite placements are pulled in to the ISTEP. And how I would imagine seeing this play out is that we pull all of your worksite placements into your individual's ISTEPs under this Get Permanent Employment as part of this program. And then you'll be able to go through the process of, okay, let's enter our assessment initial summary. Let's go ahead and identify a goal. So once you identify your goal, then you'll be able to just go in and edit the step that we will already have entered in for you and just associate it with whatever goals that you have set up for that customer. So that's the plan. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Okay. So I do see that there is a question about allowing your customers to go back into their Employment 101 and updating their information. So I'm going to log into my account. I got logged out since I've been in test for so long. Okay. Yes, let me go to my Employment 101. Go to the guide. Okay, so if I view my plans, and then, so it'll say edit, okay? So when you say edit, it'll take you back here, okay? So as you were going through and updating information, because we tried to put this in line with everything that they, each step as they went through. So as they were building out their career plan, everything was over here on this side. So as I had gone through each of these, so let me just go back. You can see it changes as I go through here. But over on the right-hand side, you'll see my career plan. And so we don't have them edit it in this screen for future enhancement. I mean, I think that's a great idea. For our current situation, it'll just be, in this career plan section. They can go into each individual one wherever they want it to. And that's, unfortunately, at this time, that's where we have to update the information. Do you think that'll solve, I mean, it's not as intuitive as what we would like, but do you think that would solve your situation, or is there something in addition going on to that? Okay. I saw typing, but I might still be typing. So any other questions? Okay, good deal. Yeah, just let me know if there's something that's not working. All right. Well, that's all I have for today, and I'll let you know next week, hopefully Monday or Tuesday, if there's some additional instructions. If you're eager to jump into the ISTEP, like I said, I just need to give my programmers a little bit of time so we can figure out how to get the existing information that you have already in there into the ISTEP. And so it requires minimal effort or work on your part, since you've already done it. So I saw that there was typing, but if you don't have any other questions, then I will talk to you next week. You can always give me a call or